Titus Andronicus are an indie rock band hailing from New Jersey, and they've been making music for like over a decade now, I think. Their first album was 2008. Then they dropped The Monitor in 2010, which is easily their best friggin' album. Holy shit, this is such a good art punk, like, indie rock, like, just fucking great album. It's easily their magnum opus, and since then they've not been anywhere near close to making an album as good. I mean, their debut was alright, but The Monitor is really the one. And then they dropped this like 90-minute epic in 2015, which didn't go over too well. The vocals on that album sounded very strained and very poor. I don't really know what happened to the vocalist, but he definitely dropped off a little bit in quality on that album, and the whole album ran a little bit too long. It got a bit dull. Wasn't really anything special about it, considering it was meant to be like an epic album, but it just ended up being okay. And here we are 3 years later. They've dropped their latest album, A Productive Cough, which I find kind of ironic considering the vocalist's voice, as he does sound like he constantly has a cough. I don't know if they're being meta here and referencing themselves, because obviously the vocalist did get a lot of negativity thrown his way with that last album they dropped. Most people were bothered by the vocals. I'd say not really the 90-minute runtime. It was in fact how poor he sounded, and it continues on this album, honestly. Except what we've got this time is a very nostalgic album. Honestly, this sounds so nostalgic for the 70s. Each song just feels like it's trying to be any rock band that came from that era. There's no distinct style on this album. It's just really kind of disappointing to listen to a band that once made pretty original music, really just throwing it back to 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And it never sounds that exciting when bands do this. I think Foxygen managed to do it well. They have a charming sensibility about their music. They just have a vocalist that has so much personality, but I don't really feel like it comes across from Titus Andronicus at all. The opening track has this like piano lead that sounds like Jingle Bells. Like it does a do 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 do, like it's just like, I don't even know what the hell's going on. It's one massive pet peeve I have in music where like songs reference like a nursery rhyme. That Charlotte Gainsbourg album did this. She did like a Ring a Ring of Roses type thing, and there's plenty of other albums that do it as well. And then this album starts off with a piano lead that sounds like Jingle Bells. It's just an instant like no for me. And you know, for the rest of the album we can just get 70s worship really. It could be The Who at some points. It could be Led Zeppelin, it could be David Bowie. It's really just any of those bands sprinkled all in one bowl, mixed together with a vocalist that doesn't have anywhere near as much talent as those previous bands once did. And we even literally get a cover song by Bob Dylan, Like a Rolling Stone, which is a great song, by the way. If you've never listened to Bob Dylan, please go back and listen to him. He's an amazing musician. I'm sure you've all heard of him anyway. I'm not trying to be like, oh, he's so underground and indie that you don't know him. I mean, like, if you're young and you've never had time to go back to his albums, please do. They're not just old albums that haven't aged well. They're actually incredible albums. And Like a Rolling Stone is one of his like most famous songs, and they pretty much cover it here. Honestly, it's not that terrible. They change a few things to make it more like their style, but it's like one of those covers that whenever it comes on the album, I'm just like, I just want to go back and listen to the original, really. That's how I feel every time I hear it. It's not terrible though, it's decent, but again, it just makes you want to listen to the original version. And that's this album literally in a nutshell. It just makes you want to go back to that era and listen to those bands that did this sound perfectly, really. That's kind of what this album is. Unfortunately, I don't think there's any more to it than that. If you like this sound so much that you want to hear it again in 2018, then you'll probably like this album. But honestly, all the bands that they're trying to be on this album did it way better back then. Above the Bodega does have a very bluesy riff. It's like bow, 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 bow. Like it is really catchy, and then there's those like generic sha-la-la-la in the background. You know, like I feel like if I heard this like in a pub like by a local band, I'd probably be like nodding my head along to it, you know, like I'd have some kind of enjoyment if I was like with my friends. But you know, when you're just actively choosing to listen to this, and not being forced to listen to it by some local live band that you've stumbled across walking into a pub, it's just like it's less interesting, it's less enjoyable, because you're just like, well, I don't really feel like I want to hear this all over again. I'm pretty much saying the same things over again here. I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't want to keep repeating myself. But yeah, if you like rock music that's bluesy and 70s inspired, this is for you. But for me, it's too nostalgic. I can't be bothered to listen to this, really. Not every album has to be innovative and completely unique and changing the game, I get that, but also being nostalgic for the sake of nostalgia is actually quite lazy. You know, at least their last album, they went a bit out there and tried to be quite grandiose and adventurous, but this has got none of that, I don't think. So yeah, D plus for me. If you've heard this album, let me know what you think. Subscribe to the channel for more reviews if you like this review. And there's going to be like more interviews and podcasts and track reactions and lists and all that stuff. And do subscribe. Anything music related, basically. And yeah. Sha-la-la-la. Sha-la-la-la.